I'm Sarah Lee, 42, female. I live in a quiet suburban town where the biggest news is usually the high school football team's latest win. For 15 years, I've taught second grade at the local elementary school, a job I love with all my heart. My life was simple, predictable, and I thought deeply happy. But I was about to learn that the life I had built was a house of cards, and a single text message was the gust of wind that would bring it all down. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Our marriage was, by all accounts, a success story. David and I met in our mid-20s, two ambitious people ready to build a life. He was a junior financial advisor then, his eyes full of fire and grand plans. I was just starting my teaching career, passionate about shaping young minds. We were a team. We bought a modest starter home, celebrated each other's promotions, and held hands during the tough times, like when my mother passed away. For 15 years, he was my rock, my partner, the person I thought I knew better than myself. Our life together was a comfortable rhythm. Weekdays were a blur of school bells for me and market bells for him. He would come home late, smelling of expensive cologne and city air, and I would have dinner waiting. We'd talk about our days, or rather, I would talk about my students, their funny antics and small triumphs, and he would nod along, his mind seemingly elsewhere, lost in spreadsheets and stock tickers. I chalked it up to the pressures of his job. He was a senior wealth manager now, responsible for the fortunes of important people. I understood that it came with a heavy mental load. I tried to be the perfect, supportive wife, the calm harbor to his stormy sea. Looking back, the signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs I refused to see. They were small things, easily explained away. There were the client dinners that stretched late into the night more and more frequently. There was the new secret password on his phone, which he explained away as a new company security protocol. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I thought. He started taking business trips on weekends, to conferences I'd never heard of in cities he'd never mentioned wanting to visit. He'd return exhausted but with a strange, satisfied energy, bringing me a cheap airport souvenir as a token of his thoughtfulness. I'd place the little snow globes and keychains on my dresser, symbols of a life I was proud of. Our finances were something David handled exclusively. "You have enough to worry about with your kids at school, honey," he'd say, patting my hand. "Let me handle the investments, it's what I do." It made sense, he was the expert. I had my own small checking account for personal expenses, into which a portion of my teacher's salary was deposited. The rest, along with his substantial income, went into our joint savings and investment accounts. This was our future, our retirement, our dream of buying a little cottage by the lake, our security. He would show me statements occasionally, a dizzying array of numbers and charts that he would quickly summarize. "We're doing great, Sarah, on track for everything." I'd smile, feeling safe and cared for. I was a teacher, not a numbers person. I trusted him completely. It was my biggest mistake. The emotional distance grew so gradually I barely noticed it. Our conversations became transactional, about bills and groceries. The easy laughter that used to fill our home faded into a quiet hum of coexistence. He stopped asking about the funny things my students said. He stopped noticing when I got a haircut. If I tried to initiate a deeper conversation to ask if he was happy, he would just sigh, run a hand through his perfectly styled hair, and say, "I'm just tired, Sarah." It's been a long week, and I, the ever-understanding wife, would let it go. I told myself this was just what long-term marriage looked like. The fiery passion of youth mellows into a comfortable companionship. We were comfortable, weren't we? I was, he, it turns out, was anything but. He was living a completely different life, one that didn't include me, and I was the last to know. It was a Tuesday, a day like any other. The fluorescent lights of the teacher's lounge hummed above me as I microwaved my leftover lasagna. It was my lunch break, a precious 25-minute pocket of peace in a day filled with the chaotic, beautiful energy of 7-year-olds. I was scrolling through pictures of a classroom art project on my phone, smiling at the lopsided clay penguins my students had made, when my screen lit up with a new message. It was from David. My heart did a little flutter the way it still did sometimes. He rarely texted during the day. I opened the message, expecting a quick "love you" or a question about what we were having for dinner. My fork, laden with pasta, stopped halfway to my mouth. The words on the screen were sharp, sterile, and utterly devastating. They didn't even form a coherent paragraph, just a series of brutal, disjointed statements. "I want a divorce, I've moved on, my lawyer will be in touch," that was it. No explanation, no apology, no "I'm sorry it has to be this way." Just 3 clinical sentences that detonated my entire world. I read the message again and then a third time. My brain couldn't process it, it had to be a mistake. A cruel joke, maybe his phone was stolen. I immediately tried to call him. The phone rang once, then went straight to voicemail. His voice, the familiar, warm baritone from the outgoing message, sounded like a ghost's. "Hi, you've reached David, leave a message." A cold dread, sharp and metallic, spread through my chest. I tried calling again, straight to voicemail again. Voicemail? My hands started to shake and the plastic fork clattered onto the floor. My colleague's cheerful chatter from the other side of the lounge faded into a dull roar. It felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. I stumbled out of the lounge and into the empty hallway, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I sent him a flurry of frantic texts. What is this? David, call me. Is this a joke? Please talk to me. The three little dots appeared, indicating he was typing. For a moment, a wave of relief washed over me. He would explain, it was a misunderstanding. But the message that came through was even colder than the first. It's not a joke, Sarah. I've cleared out my things from the house. Don't contact me again. His things, I had left the house this morning and everything was normal. He'd kissed my cheek, a quick, passionless peck, and said, have a good day. He was already gone then. He knew as he kissed me goodbye that he was never coming back. The thought made me physically ill. I leaned against the cool tile of the hallway, fighting the urge to be sick. The bell for the end of lunch rang, a shrill, jarring sound that pulled me back to reality. I had a classroom full of children waiting for me. I had to teach a lesson on fractions. How was I supposed to teach fractions when my entire life had just been shattered into a million pieces? Somehow, I got through the rest of the school day. I moved like an automaton, my voice distant and strange in my own ears. I smiled at my students, corrected their work, and read them a story, but I wasn't really there. My mind was a chaotic storm of questions and pain. 15 years, a text message. My body felt numb, but my mind was screaming. When the final bell rang and the last child was picked up, I collapsed into my chair, the silence of the empty classroom pressing in on me. The phone in my hand felt like a cold, dead weight. That was how he ended our life together. Not with a conversation, not with counseling, not even with a note on the kitchen table. He did it with a text message, like a teenager breaking up with a summer fling. The disrespect, the cowardice of it all, was a separate, stinging wound on top of the gaping hole of the betrayal itself. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember stopping at red lights or making the familiar turn onto my street. The street that was no longer ours. As I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the emptiness. The spot where David's sleek black sedan was always parked was vacant. A hollow space that mirrored the one growing inside my chest. I walked into the house, my keys trembling in my hand. He was telling the truth. His side of the closet was bare, hangers lying scattered on the floor. The top drawers of his dresser were pulled open, empty. His toiletries were gone from the bathroom, leaving behind only my things, which suddenly seemed to take up too much space. He had done this while I was at school, teaching children how to be kind and respectful. The irony was suffocating. He had planned this, orchestrated my humiliation with cold, calculated precision. I sank onto our bed, the bed we had shared for a decade and a half, and I finally let myself break. I sobbed until my throat was raw and my head pounded. How could this be happening? Who was this man? The David I knew, the man I had loved and trusted, would never do this. But he had. After what felt like hours, a new kind of fear began to creep in, a practical, terrifying thought that cut through the fog of my grief: the money. Our joint account, it held everything we had saved together. My salary, his bonuses, the inheritance my parents had left me, it was our entire future. A frantic energy seized me. I scrambled for my laptop, my fingers fumbling on the keys as I typed in the bank's web address. I logged into our online banking portal, my heart hammering against my ribs. I clicked on the summary page for our main savings account, and then the world stopped. The balance read $0. I blinked, convinced my tear-blurred eyes were deceiving me. I refreshed the page, still there. A perfect, brutal row of zeros. I clicked on the transaction history. There was only one recent entry dated that very morning, a wire transfer. The entire balance, every last cent, moved to an account I didn't recognize. He had taken it all, he had left me with nothing. The shock was so profound it felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a robbery. He hadn't just left me. He had deliberately, methodically, and maliciously ruined me. The man I had supported, whose career I had championed, whose laundry I had folded, had stripped me of my security and my past, all in one swift, silent motion. He had taken my parents' legacy, the money they had worked their whole lives for, and vanished. I felt a surge of pure, undiluted rage that burned away my tears. This was no longer just about a broken heart. This was about survival. He had left me financially destitute, thinking I would crumble. He probably imagined me begging, pleading, helpless. He had underestimated me. He had forgotten who I was before I became his wife. My first coherent thought was, Jessica, I needed Jessica. My best friend since college, a force of nature who had become one of the sharpest divorce lawyers in the state. I dialed her number, my hand steady now, my voice shaking but clear. Jess, I said when she answered, it's David, he's left me. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and he took all the money. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Jessica's voice, which was usually warm and full of laughter, turned to ice. I'm on my way, don't touch anything, don't call him, don't do anything until I get there. We're going to burn him to the ground. In that moment, hearing the fury in her voice, a tiny ember of hope ignited within me. He had started a war. He had no idea I was about to bring an army. Jessica arrived in under 20 minutes, her face a mask of grim determination. She took one look at my pale, tear-streaked face and enveloped me in a hug that felt like steel and velvet. She didn't offer platitudes or empty comforts. She got straight to work, turning my grief-stricken home into a war room. Okay, Sarah, she said, her voice crisp and professional. Cry later. Right now, we gather intel. She sat me down at the kitchen table with my laptop. First things first, we need to document everything. Tell me his name, his firm, everything you know about that transfer. I gave her the details of the wire transfer, the destination bank, the account number I didn't recognize. Jessica's eyes narrowed. He's arrogant, she muttered, typing furiously on her own tablet. He thinks because he's a financial guy, he can outsmart the system. He's wrong. While Jessica started making calls, putting freezes on any credit cards in my name and alerting her contacts at various financial institutions, she gave me a task. Go through his social media, his friends' social media, anything, look for clues. A new woman, strange activity, anything out of the ordinary. He's been planning this for months, Sarah. People that arrogant always leave a digital trail. It felt ghoulish like spying, but Jessica was right. This was a battle for my life. I logged into my rarely used social media accounts and started digging. David's own profile was locked down and professional, filled with articles about market trends and photos from company charity events. But then I started looking at his colleagues' pages. I found a junior analyst from his firm, a woman named Emily. Her profile was public. My breath hitched. The photos were a curated highlight reel of a life I never knew he was living. There they were, David and Emily in Italy, a trip he told me was a solo leadership retreat. They were clinking wine glasses, the Colosseum lit up behind them. There they were in Miami, on a boat, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist as she laughed, young and carefree in a bikini. He had told me that trip was a grueling, high-stakes conference. There were photos of them at expensive restaurants I'd never been to, wearing clothes I'd never seen him in. He had a whole other wardrobe, a whole other life. The most recent photo, posted just 3 days ago, was a close-up of her hand. On her ring finger was a massive diamond ring, a ring I instantly knew was far beyond the budget of a junior analyst. The caption read, "Future Mrs. Thompson, I can't wait to spend forever with the most amazing man in the world." Her last name wasn't Thompson. His was. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The late nights, the secret calls, the weekend trips. It wasn't just an affair, he was building a new life with her, financed by me, financed by my parents' money. The rage I felt before was nothing compared to the cold, hard fury that settled deep in my bones now. He hadn't just cheated on me, he had used me. My stable, respectable life as a teacher was the perfect cover for his deception. My trust was the resource he had exploited to fund his double life. I showed the photos to Jessica. She scrolled through them, her expression growing darker with each image. He paid for that ring with your money, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. He paid for that trip to Italy with your inheritance. This isn't just infidelity, Sarah. This is dissipation of marital assets. It's financial fraud on a massive scale. She pulled up the bank statements from the last 2 years, which I had thankfully saved in a cloud account. We started cross-referencing the dates of his business trips with credit card charges. A $12,000 charge at a jewelry store in New York, thousands on flights and five-star hotels, thousands more at designer boutiques. The evidence was overwhelming, a digital roadmap of his betrayal. He thinks he's covered his tracks by moving the liquid cash, Jessica explained, her eyes gleaming with a predatory light I had only ever seen her use in a courtroom. But he's left a paper trail a mile long. He's a financial advisor, Sarah. He has a professional license. He has a duty to act ethically. What he has done is not just grounds for a contentious divorce, it's grounds for a professional conduct investigation that could destroy his entire career. For the first time since I read that text message, a genuine, albeit grim, smile touched my lips. He thought he could discard me and walk away with everything. He thought I was just a quiet, unassuming schoolteacher who would fall apart. He had no idea that I had a best friend who was a shark, and that he had just handed us all the ammunition we would ever need. The mask was off. I knew who my husband really was, a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next few weeks were a blur of calculated action. The initial shock and grief were still there, a constant, dull ache in my chest, but they were now overshadowed by a powerful, clarifying sense of purpose. Jessica was my general, and I was her most dedicated soldier. We spent our evenings huddled over documents, building our case with meticulous precision. My living room, once a place of quiet comfort, was now a command center, covered in bank statements, timelines, and highlighted legal statutes. Jessica's first move was to file an emergency motion in court. She presented the judge with the initial evidence, the text message, the emptied bank account, and proof that David had immediately absconded with the entirety of our liquid marital assets. The judge, a no-nonsense older woman, didn't hesitate. She issued an immediate injunction, freezing David's personal accounts, including the one he had wired our money to. It was a temporary measure, but it was a critical first victory. The money was trapped, he couldn't spend another dime of it. He'll get the notification this morning, Jessica told me over the phone, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. He's going to panic. He thought he had all the time in the world. The next step was to turn up the pressure. Jessica advised against any direct communication from me. Let him wonder what you're doing. Let him sweat. Instead, she drafted a series of legal documents that were the equivalent of a strategic bombing campaign. We sent subpoenas to his employer for his salary details, bonuses, and expense reports. We subpoenaed the credit card companies for every statement from the last 3 years. We hired a forensic accountant, a quiet man named Mr. Davies, who took our mountain of evidence and began to meticulously piece together the full extent of David's financial treachery. Every day, a new piece of the puzzle fell into place. Mr. Davies discovered things I never could have found. David had been diverting portions of his bonuses into a secret account for years. He had taken out a loan against our shared investment portfolio without my knowledge, using the money for a down payment on a luxury condo, a condo that was now registered in Emily's name. He had been slowly and systematically bleeding us dry, all while looking me in the eye and telling me our future was secure. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. He wasn't just planning to leave you, Mr. Davies explained in his calm, methodical voice, pointing to a complex flowchart he had created. He was planning to leave you with nothing but debt while setting himself and his mistress up for life. This is not just immoral, Mrs. Lee, it's textbook fraud. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, Jessica prepared the final piece of our strategy. The settlement offer. It wasn't a negotiation, it was a demand. It detailed line by line every dollar he had misappropriated, every asset he had hidden, and every lie he had told. The offer was simple. He would return 100% of the money from the joint account. He would sign over his share of the house to me, free and clear. He would be responsible for the secret loan he took out. He would waive any claim to my pension and my personal savings. In return for his complete financial capitulation, we would agree to a quiet divorce and would not file a formal complaint with the financial regulatory board that governed his license. It's a generous offer, Jessica said, sliding the document across the table to me. It gives him a chance to walk away with his career intact, even if he's broke. It's more than he deserves. I read through the pages, my hand shaking slightly. It was all there in black and white, a legal testament to my husband's betrayal. For a moment, I felt a pang of something, not pity, but a sad nostalgia for the man I thought he was. But that man was a fiction. The real David was the one detailed in these pages, a greedy, selfish coward. He won't take it, I said quietly. His pride won't let him. Jessica smiled, a thin, sharp smile. Oh, I think he will. Because we're not just going to send it to his lawyer. We're going to make sure Emily gets a copy, too. Let's see how much she loves him when she realizes his entire empire was built on stolen funds and that the diamond on her finger was paid for with his wife's inheritance. The plan was no longer just about getting my money back. It was about making him face the consequences of his actions, not just legally but personally. It was about showing him and the woman he left me for exactly who he was. The confrontation wasn't in a sterile law office or a cold courtroom. It was, at my insistence, in our home, my home. I wanted him to see the life he had shattered, to stand in the space where he had lied to my face for years. Jessica had arranged it through his lawyer. He agreed, likely thinking he could use the familiar setting to his advantage to emotionally manipulate me. He was, as usual, wrong. He walked in looking flustered and angry. The confident, charming man I once knew was gone, replaced by a tense, haggard stranger. The court-ordered freeze on his accounts was clearly taking its toll. He didn't look at me, directing his words only to Jessica. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, throwing his briefcase onto a chair. "This injunction is baseless, you have no right." Jessica cut him off, her voice calm and cold as steel. "Sit down, David." He hesitated, then reluctantly sat on the edge of the sofa, a piece of furniture I had picked out in a room I had decorated. He looked small and out of place. I sat opposite him, with Jessica by my side. I hadn't seen him in person since the morning of the text. Seeing him now, my heart didn't ache with sadness, it beat with a slow, steady rhythm of resolve. He was just a man, a weak and greedy man. "We're not here to argue, David," Jessica began, sliding a thick folder across the coffee table. "We're here to present you with your options. This is a settlement offer. I suggest you read it very carefully." David scoffed, picking up the folder with disdain. He opened it, his eyes scanning the first page. As he read, his expression began to change. The arrogant defiance drained from his face, replaced by a sickly pale shock. He flipped through the pages, seeing the credit card statements, the flight itineraries, the photo of the diamond ring next to the receipt, the preliminary report from the forensic accountant. He saw his entire secret life laid bare in meticulous, undeniable detail. How did you get this? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. You're a creature of habit, David, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was even devoid of the tears he probably expected. And you're sloppy? You thought I was too stupid to notice? You thought I was too weak to fight back? You were wrong on both counts? He looked at me then, truly looked at me, and I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He didn't recognize this version of me. This is everything you stole, Jessica continued, her tone merciless. The settlement is simple, you give it all back, the house is Sarah's, the debt you took out is yours. You walk away with your clothes and your car. In exchange, we don't file a formal ethics complaint with the SEC. You get to keep your license and your career for now. He stared at the papers, his mind clearly racing, looking for an angle, a loophole. This is extortion, he hissed. No, Jessica corrected him smoothly. This is a consequence. This is the bill for your new life coming due. She leaned forward slightly. And just so we're all clear on the stakes, a copy of this entire file was also couriered to Miss Emily Parker this morning. I imagine she'll be very interested to learn that her beautiful new condo was financed with marital debt and that her future is built on a foundation of fraud. That was the final blow. The color completely drained from his face. He thought of Emily, he thought of his job, his reputation, the carefully constructed world of success he had built. He saw it all about to go up in flames. He had gambled everything, assuming I would be a passive victim. He had lost. He sat in silence for a long time, the folder lying open in his lap. The cocky financial wizard was gone. In his place was a cornered man who had just seen the true price of his greed. He finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. There was no remorse in them, only the bitter resentment of being caught. Fine, he said, the word choked with defeat. My lawyer will sign. He stood up, not even bothering to take the folder with him, and walked out of my house for the last time. As the door clicked shut behind him, I didn't feel triumph or joy. I felt a profound sense of release. The battle was over. The weight I had been carrying for weeks was finally gone. The weeks that followed the signing of the settlement were a blur of legal paperwork and logistical changes. True to his word, David signed everything his lawyer put in front of him. The money was transferred back into a new account that was solely in my name. The deed to the house was changed. It all happened with a quiet, anticlimactic efficiency. He disappeared from my life as quickly and silently as he had tried to ruin it. I heard through the grapevine that Emily left him. Faced with a man who was suddenly broke and professionally disgraced, she apparently decided he wasn't the amazing man she thought he was. The luxury condo was sold to pay back the loan he had taken out. He was a ghost in the town we had once called ours. For me, life began to change, slowly at first, and then all at once. I sold the house. It was too big for me and too full of ghosts. I used the money from the sale, combined with my return savings, to buy a small, sunny apartment in a different part of town. It had a little balcony where I could grow herbs and a big window in the living room that let in the morning light. It was all mine. The first night I slept there, on a mattress on the floor surrounded by boxes, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. It wasn't just about being free of David, it was about being free of the lie we had been living. I had been so focused on being a supportive partner that I had lost sight of myself. I had forgotten how to be just Sarah. I started rediscovering the things I loved. I took painting classes on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I reconnected with old friends, my laughter feeling genuine and easy for the first time in a long time. My work at the school became my sanctuary more than ever, a place of purpose and joy. My students, with their simple, honest emotions, were a healing balm. There are still days when a wave of sadness hits me, a grief for the 15 years I lost and the man I thought I married. Betrayal leaves a scar that never fully fades. But the scar is no longer a gaping wound, it's a reminder of my own resilience. It's a reminder that I was pushed to the absolute brink and I did not break, I fought back. My life isn't perfect, but it's authentic. It's mine. I am not just a survivor of a terrible betrayal, I am the architect of my own new beginning. David thought that by taking the money, he was taking my power. He was wrong. My power was never in a bank account. It was in my strength, my integrity, and my courage to stand up and fight for myself. He may have ended our marriage with a text message, but I was the one who got to write the final chapter. And in my version of the story, I am the one who gets the happy ending.